We're back, everyone. Welcome to Subjectively, the channel where we discuss character design in the context of popular media. My name is Jack, and I never let my personal opinions affect my analysis of said media. Anyway, Shyvana came just short of winning the VGU poll for the third year in a row, losing to a champion that no one seemed to care about until he was a candidate in this year's election. In fact, the only people I know who like Skarner don't even want him reworked. It's fine, it's totally fine. Shyvana doesn't need a rework. She's perfect the way she is. I love how her face is an expressionless mask, and how her dragon form looks like it would break its ankles just by walking. Okay, sorry. This video isn't about Shyvana, I know. Putting my personal preferences aside, I gotta say that Skarner, the winner of 2022's visual and gameplay update poll, is more than a worthy candidate for a rework. Like so many of League's older champions, Skarner was a victim of Riot's underdeveloped design team in the early years of the game's existence. The short explanation is, he's boring. He looks like a generic enemy from a generic RPG with generic voice acting and, well, actually, honestly pretty nice colors, I won't lie. But generic colors. The long explanation is that he's actually a very complicated and interesting character who gets sold short by his uninspired visuals. He has little to no discernible personality, he doesn't read as a protagonist at all, and most people would assume at first glance that he's some sort of one-dimensional villain devoid of empathy or even sentience. Today, our goal is to change that. We're going to break down the character of Skarner as he exists today, delve into his lore and explore what about it makes him so compelling. Then, we're going to tear him apart and build him back up again, omitting the features that contrast his internal themes and improving upon the aspects of his design that we like. Our end goal is to create a new design that reflects what we believe is the most appealing aspects of Skarner, and one that hopefully you all like better than what we have now. This isn't really us guessing at what Riot might do with their official Skarner VGU, it's more of what we'd like to see. Hopefully though, the real VGU contains some of the same ideas that we had. Moreover, we won't be making any adjustments to his gameplay or kit. This is purely a visual critique of Skarner, but we will consider his current set of in-game mechanics in our redesign. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to let us know in the comments and subscribe for more. Be sure to check out our other champion redesign videos as well, but fair warning, we've been getting better and better at this each time we do it, so the first few might not hold up as well. Alright, enough preamble, let's dig in to the video. That's a pun. Skarner, the Crystal Vanguard. One of League of Legends' least played champions, but let's not hold that against him. In fact, some of my all-time favorite champion designs in the game make up the bottom of the pick rate list on op.gg, and it's got nothing to do with how they look. You know what? That's actually a good idea. Let's pretend we're looking at Skarner for the very first time, and see if we can get even remotely close to what his actual backstory is. For some of you watching this, it might actually be your first time seeing him. Starting with his splash art, which is what you would see when you pick him in Champion Select or unlock him from the store, already he's sticking out like a sore thumb. Skarner is one of the few champions from the olden times of League of Legends that still uses his original splash art. Most of these decade-old designs have either been completely reimagined, or at the very least have had their splash art updated to better fit the modern aesthetic of the game. Poor Skarner though, I mean, this looks like something I saw at my senior thesis show at Mass Art. Which isn't to say it's horrible, but it's not even close to the level of professionalism that nearly every other champion's portrait has. In his splash art, Skarner is shown barreling towards the viewer at full speed, teeth bared and claws out. When I first saw this character, I assumed that he was some sort of mindless, destructive monster, similar to Cho'Gath. In fact, he shares a lot of similarities with champions from the Void. A menacing jaw full of jagged teeth, an insectoid or arachnoid anatomy, and a primarily purple color scheme to boot. Looking at this artwork next to that of Rek'Sai's, you might assume that the two are even related somehow. Now, let's look at his in-game model and animations. Honestly, this model isn't the ugliest thing in League of Legends. Far from it, if you ask me. Surprisingly, Skarner is the only champion in the game that I can think of whose splash art actually looks worse than their in-game model. Most characters have the opposite problem. He's slender and spindly, implying a lot of mobility and perhaps fragility. His animations are decent, considering the point in League's history when he was created, and the particle effects on his abilities are outdated at worst, but isolated from the context of the modern game, there's really nothing objectively wrong with them. His voice acting is okay.
My stinger brings ugly death.
It still comes off as super aggressive, but that's consistent with the splash art. He also has this blatant homage to Pokemon when he stands idle in a bush.
Skarner!
I don't know how I feel about it, honestly. So, our impressions of Skarner based off of his current appearance in the game are, he is violent, hostile and aggressive, maybe even evil. He has some connection to the Void based off of his color scheme and physical anatomy, and based off of his minimal voice lines, he probably isn't super important to the overarching story of League. If you came to these conclusions the first time you looked at Skarner, you're not alone. These are the things that I thought about when I first saw him, and to be honest, I didn't know better until just a few years ago. In fact, not one of these assumptions about Skarner is true. He is not evil, he has nothing to do with the Void, and he actually plays a huge part within the context of Runeterra's lore. Remember those glowing rocks from Arcane? Yeah, those are his family's souls, and you know what? Let's take this one step at a time. If you read Skarner's current biography on the official League of Legends homepage, you'll learn that he's what's called a Brackern, an ancient race of arcane beings that long predate the mortal races of Runeterra. Despite what you may think by looking at Skarner, these crystalline critters are not savage, violent, or destructive by nature. On the contrary, they're actually very spiritual and a noble race with a complex, beautiful culture. The Brackerns share their experiences, hopes, fears, and even personalities through their name stones. Basically, their soul preserved in a crystal long after an individual has died. When a new Brackern has come of age, they will set out on a pilgrimage to find one of these crystals and inherit the legacy of the one who left it behind. Our Brackern, Skarner, had only just merged with his namestone when things started to take a dark turn. A great war had erupted on the surface, and the peaceful Brackerns had no interest in taking part in such violence. Skarner, along with the rest of his people, fell into a deep dormancy below the sands to wait out the chaos. This sleep was shattered by the sound of earthquakes and drills as the humans burrowed down from the above place, hunting for the namestones. You see, these crystals weren't just important to the Brackern. The ancient magic that filled the namestones could be repurposed into any number of useful contraptions. The humans call it Hextech, and once they found out just how valuable this energy source was, they couldn't get enough. They pillaged through the crystal valleys and subterranean caves in which the Brackern dwell, and ripped from their dormant bodies their precious namestones, not only killing the Brackern in the process, but obliterating the essence of the individual and the countless souls that came before it. Skarner awoke before he befell the same fate, and attempted to fight off the soft skins, but by the time he reached his kin, it was already too late. When the soft skins came, the ground knew only pain. Our songs became cries as we were torn and broken and scattered. I heard the sorrow song as the soft skins unearthed my kin. They tore crystal namestones from our bodies as we screamed louder than earth shakes and stole them away. I sang long into the many nights, sang until my heart was empty and cold, but they did not return. Today, I am alone in the above place. Today, the dry wind burns my skin. With every step, the sand grinds against me in protest. I fight my urge to bury myself down, to go inside the earth's deep dark. I am not a part. I am part of the one, not beyond.
Oh no! I seem to have stepped on one of my cousins!
Yeah, it's safe to say that Skarner's current design doesn't quite fit his lore. At his core, Skarner is a gentle, peaceful soul who has been traumatized by the greed and violence of human nature. He's seen his family mercilessly slaughtered before him, and now he wanders aimlessly through a foreign land, hoping against hope that he may once again be reunited with his people. Visually, there's nothing about the way this champion looks that reflects these themes. I mean, I guess you could write off his imposing demeanor as a result of his trauma, as reflected in this quote, where Skarner is attacked by humans after attempting to explain his plight. But is Skarner's most characteristic trait his final resort of violence against humankind? I don't think so. As players, we only see the side of Skarner that's aggressive and hateful. It's like reading Frankenstein without getting the story from the perspective of the monster. Skarner's not just some one-dimensional bad guy driven by vengeance and hate. He's a complicated character with a compelling backstory and a reason for why he feels like he needs to fight. In my redesign, I want to emphasize these aspects of his character, turn him from a generic baddie into a sympathetic protagonist, without diminishing his unique physical characteristics. This is probably the biggest change characters receive when they're given VGUs in League of Legends, adding dimensionality to their appearance so that the audience can develop a connection to them, be it one of sympathy or one of disdain. We're going to employ some of that same visual empathy in Skarner's redesign. My first few sketches for Skarner were explorations in shapes, experimenting with ways to make him look a little bit more tanky. The most popular build for Skarner right now is tanky, but he still looks so meek and slender. In terms of physical shape language, I wanted to convey that Skarner would rather hide away from conflict if he had the choice, so I wanted his main carapace to resemble something like a turtle shell that he could tuck his head under, pretty blatantly implying his reclusive nature. I also drew some visual influence from arthropods other than scorpions. Limiting myself to just one real-world inspiration made it almost impossible to innovate on Skarner's design. It was actually Nickyboi who gave me this idea, another YouTuber with a vested interest in League's character design. He reached out to us, and seeing as he's currently working on his own video about the Skarner VGU, we wanted to get his perspective on the topic. Here's what he had to say.
Hi, hello, I'm Nickyboi. I make League of Legends content. I've been following Subjectively ever since the Redesigning Pokemon days, so this really is a treat for me to be here. And honestly, just I love what they've done with my boy Skarner here. He's one of my favorite champions in League of Legends, despite his flaws. So I'm super excited to see what Riot could do with him, and if this is the direction they took, I'm game. That being said, I don't think this is the direction they would go. Galio-style reworks have proven to take the champion concept in a far more opposite direction than their original incarnation. I truly think the best kind of reworks are like Warwick, Fiddlesticks, or even Mundo to an extent. They fully modernize the champion while still keeping them the same. Sure, the end results of reworks like Galio or Urgot are far better than their original counterparts, but the old champion was essentially deleted from League of Legends. And sure, that method could work for Skarner. You could argue he's kinda clunky and doesn't work right, but I think there's a lot to Skarner that still works. So the idea of losing my Crystal Scorpion boy entirely is not exactly a happy one. So I decided, while Jack and Claire made a bit more of a Galio-style rework, I wanted to make a design that's more akin to a Warwick-style rework. That being, he's still kind of fundamentally the same, just upgraded. And what does that kind of Skarner look like? Well, you'll just have to wait until my video is finished, which will probably take a while, so enjoy this one first.
Nickyboi's Skarner video is in the works as we speak, so be sure to head over and subscribe to his channel for another take on the champion, as well as a ton of other incredibly well-made videos surrounding the topic of League and its characters. After my initial 3 sketches, I spent a little time working on ideas for Skarner's face. In my opinion, the way Skarner's face looks now implies to me that it might have been the last part of his character that they designed. It is so void of personality, and it really just robs Skarner of any attempt at looking empathetic. Don't misinterpret empathetic for pathetic. I don't want him to look weak or frail. I just wanted audiences to be able to see that he was more than just the Crystal Scorpion. He feels like a human would. Sadness, fear, longing, hatred, excitement, and his current face doesn't look capable of expressing any of those emotions, except maybe hatred. My final design for his face was a hybrid of a few separate ideas that I liked, combining features that implied eyebrows, a chin, and even a crystal beard to create something that looked fearsome, but not exclusively violent. I also included some runic carvings to help visually indicate his sentience and culture. Another big part of this was removing the jagged, uneven teeth. They just don't seem to have any significance to his character and portray him as something more akin to a ruthless predator rather than a spiritual pacifist. After I had a face I liked, I started working on a final sketch for the body. I began with a front-facing view, but I knew that I would need to do a couple of turnarounds to ensure that the complex anatomy was understood not just by my audience, but by myself as well. I liked the somewhat trilobite-inspired metathorax that I had conceived in my sketching process. The exaggerated shapes helped me bring a little bit more excitement to his silhouette and made him feel more than just a scorpion. He's not a scorpion, after all. He's a fantasy creature with freedom to improvise on real-world imagery. One of the other changes I made was the inclusion of an asymmetric set of claws. Having two enormous axe-like appendages on the front of Skarner contributed more towards a hostile personality rather than one of culture and compassion. I didn't want to change his kit or imply that he was incapable of fighting, but I did include a new visual indicator of his sentience. One massive claw that he could use in his Q attack animation, and one smaller claw to imply his ability to interact with his world in ways other than attacking or destroying. A more delicate and precise tool befitting an insightful and curious being like Skarner, without depriving him of the capability to defend himself. Asymmetry like this is a great way to characterize a design. Like on his face, I included carved runes all over his body and claw. When I started adding color, I made sure to dial back the purple as much as I could. Not only does this new color help distinguish Skarner from the bug-like purple void champions, it also connects him more to the visual identity of Hextech. Modern players and fans of League are very familiar with Hextech imagery, be it from champions that utilize the technology, the Hextech skin line, or the inclusion of the energy source in Arcane. And the primary visual indicator of Hextech is now blue, so I wanted to reflect that in Skarner's new palette. As an aside, I just want to say how much I love painting crystals and gemstones. I knew that I would have fun redesigning Skarner no matter what, because even if I changed nothing, I still love the process of painting all of that reflective light and color that goes into this kind of subject matter. Next, I started working on a top-down view. This perspective was arguably more important than the first because League of Legends is played from a semi-top-down perspective. It was at this point I realized why they gave Skarner such massive bulging eyes. A champion that walks like a scorpion makes it nearly impossible to see his face. His elongated chin and massive eyes make it so that even from a top-down perspective, you can still discern his head and facial features. Well, tough titties is what I say. I really liked his face the way I had it, and I wasn't going to change it to address this issue. Instead, I made it a goal to have the top of his new design be way more interesting looking than Skarner's current appearance. The trilobite-like shell already helped with that, and the yellow rune carvings I introduced also helped break up that space a lot better. Before, Skarner's face had to be designed to compensate for the lack of interesting features on his body. Now it doesn't have to look goofy just for the sake of visual focus. That burden can be placed on the carapace, claw, and stinger. This, I think, helps further my characterization of Skarner as someone who doesn't want to fight. He'd rather hide underneath his ornate and durable crystal shell than literally stick his neck out into the violent, chaotic world of Runeterra. Finally, I made a side view. The most important part of visual clarity from this perspective was his stinger, on which I wanted to include a tiny barb at the end. It's a minuscule detail, but I like the implication of a hook-like modification on his stinger to clarify it's not just for stabbing, but for grabbing. This side view also helped clarify the more desaturated and stony underside of Skarner. That would probably only be seen by a player when he's killed or during taunts. It's important with an unusual character anatomy like this one to do a comprehensive set of turnarounds so that, if we were to assume that I'd hand these off to a 3D modeler, they'd be able to understand what the character looks like from all angles. This redesign didn't take too many passes before I settled on a look that I was really happy with. I feel like it checks all of my boxes. It makes Skarner look more empathetic by giving him expressive eyes and a less threatening mouth. It helps convey his reclusive nature by giving him a heavy shell that he can retract his head into. It clarifies the duality of his personality with his massive attacking claw and delicate grabbing claw. It distinguishes him from the void and strengthens his visual connection to Hextech by switching the primary palette from purple to blue, all while retaining the aspects of his design that I think people like most about him. You'll have to let me know if you like these changes as much as I do, but of course, we're not done yet. The last thing I did for this redesign is sketch out a thumbnail for a new default splash art of Skarner. Of course, Claire is the superior painter, so I handed this sketch and my design off to her to finish. I'll let her talk to you a little bit about her process while you watch her time-lapse.
Hi guys! As you saw, I have been working from Jack's thumbnail to polish off his broader shapes into a finished render of our Skarner design. So what you're seeing is sped up by approximately 9,000 or more percent, so I apologize about all the zooming in, but the full rendering process for these paintings is pretty prolonged. It takes a while because we want to do it right. We really care about League of Legends and the champions designs, which is why we make these videos in the first place. So of course we want a lot of care to go into these final products. This particular process was a little bit different for me because instead of working with the colors and hues and values all at the same time, probably on just 1 or 2 layers, I really wanted to take my time to get the textures just right. And I figured the best way to do that would be using a grayscale sort of value prioritized approach to doing this painting. So what that means is I did everything in black and white, basically. I used a lot of references for crystals and crystalline textures, and everything about this piece before I even considered color, I just considered value. Value, just refers to the amount of lightness in a tone. This is an approach that a lot of professional artists use. It's kind of just your personal taste, whether or not it's a technique you want to go for. We've also watched a lot of Riot artists' time lapses on YouTube, and this seems to be a pretty common technique used in the official Riot art as well. And when I'm working in this way, this isn't my personal style. We really want to get close to that official Riot look. So we figured it would be worthwhile to investigate this alternative technique. Overall, I would say I had some growing pains with this technique. The black and white rendering was easy enough, that was comfortable, but when it came time to make those additional color layers, it really took a lot of tweaking and adjusting to get it looking just right. Previously, the reason I've avoided this grayscale approach is because the colors in the end result can sometimes end up looking flat, because functionally what you're doing is you're applying a wash over all of these grays. And yes, that achieves the intended result of having these really perfected textures, but at the same time, it's just one hue. But I probably used more layers than I've used in any other piece I've done in years, just trying to adjust the exact color and saturation of this final result. Especially because with Skarner, he's all crystal. He's a crystal being, so getting those subtle tone shifts as each facet of the crystalline rock construct shifts and is cracked was really important. So here's my final result. I'm pretty happy with it. It was a lot of work, but I think it paid off. Let me know what you think in the comments.
With the splash art finished, our homemade Skarner redesign is complete. What do you guys think of our final product? Skarner fans, did we keep what you love about your Crystal Vanguard, or did we massacre your boy? People who have never played Skarner but voted for him anyway, yeah, I see you out there. What do you think? Is this what you're hoping for in a potential Skarner VGU, or are you thinking that Riot takes it in another direction? Let us know down in the comments. Thanks for watching, everyone. Be sure to give this video a fat thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and yeah, I'm saying it again, subscribe if you haven't already. We'll have more League, Pokemon, and general art content coming soon. Peace and love, and we'll see you all in the next video.